This is why we love college football. This is one of the reasons why we love college football. We're in overtime at Autzen Stadium. Stanford is just taking a lead on Oregon 38-31. The Ducks have a chance to tie and extend this game. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. This is what we do each and every Saturday. Instant analysis we provide for you. The drama's there. The drama's there for us to enjoy, whether it's heartbreak or ecstasy. And we analyze it. We discuss, debate, and analyze better than anyone right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And we thank you for joining us while we watch the final moments of Stanford-Oregon. Also a really important and good game. More of a defensive struggle in the Big Ten Western Division at Kinnick Stadium, with Iowa leading Wisconsin right now 17-14. Hawkeyes with the ball. Justin Herbert with the ball as well. He's only misfired on 2 passes tonight. Make it 3. As he fired toward the end zone, Oregon has blown this game basically, but they still have an opportunity to keep it alive. But they could have been in the locker room celebrating right now. They should have been, as they led this one at 24-7. They have dominated Stanford in terms of the number of plays run, the yardage, the time of possession. Everything has been Oregon playing a better football game. But Stanford is out. Scored the Ducks in the second half, 24-7. And, of course, Oregon assaulting the game away with less than 50 seconds left on the clock. Fumbled at the Stanford 40-yard line. And Stanford moved it 45 yards in 45 seconds to kick the game-winning, game-tying field goal from Jet Toner, as Herbert has delivered what looks to be a first down pass down to the 10-yard line. All right, Ducks are alive with a first down at the Stanford 10. They trail by 7. This game will pretty much give the winner an inside track to challenge Washington as the Pac-12 North Division favorite. And both teams come into the game at 3-0. Of course, Oregon had yet to play anyone, so this was their litmus test in terms of how good is Oregon. For Stanford, it's, well, they beat San Diego State. They beat USC, some couple decent clubs. But now that they've gone to Autzen Stadium and had to come back from 17 down, Stanford is showing us some grit. What we would expect from a Stanford football team under David Shaw, that they won't give up, that they'll play well, even when they get down and outclassed offensively by an Oregon team that not only looked better in space, as you would typically, the classic Stanford-Oregon matchup is the space, the speed in space, the quickness in space versus the size along the offensive and defensive fronts, and the brute intellectual muscle of the Stanford Cardinal. But it hasn't been that type of game most of the time. It's been Oregon has physically outplayed Stanford, at least early on. Herbert delivers to the end zone on the post pattern. It's incomplete. And so now we've got 3rd and goal. Oregon, of course, needs to score to keep up with Stanford and extend this game to a second overtime. Herbert rushed off the corner, had to deliver that one. It was on time, but a good pass breakup by the defensive back for Stanford. Wisconsin has just scored a touchdown to take what will be a 21-17 lead with 57 seconds left in the game on the Iowa Hawkeyes at Kinnick Stadium. So Iowa has to score a touchdown. There is 57 seconds left. Meanwhile, Oregon has, I believe, thrown an incomplete pass. We switch back and forth. Yes, they have. They tried to go back shoulder and a little bit of hand fighting, but an incomplete pass to Mitchell in the right corner. Oregon fans and parents of players can't watch. 4th and goal from the 10. Oregon needs to convert, or they have blown a 17-point lead in the 4th quarter in losing to Stanford. But they take a timeout, so we'll switch to the Wisconsin-Iowa game. Probably no action there as well, since Wisconsin just scored to take a 21-17 lead. And yes, Alex Hornibrook leading the touchdown drive for the Badgers, who We're up 7-0. The score was at 7-7, I believe, at halftime. Yeah, 7-7 at half. Back and forth, back and forth. Not in terms of a ton of scoring, but each team has had the lead a few times in a, as expected, defensive struggle at Kinnick Stadium, with Wisconsin winning right at this point at 21-17. Of course, the Hawkeyes are undefeated, but both teams in their Big Ten opener. Wisconsin, trying to bounce back from that embarrassment at home against BYU last week, has pulled off a drive here in the last minute. Let's take some phone calls. 860-325-3687. Let's see who's on the line.
Call or two to decline.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Let's see who's on the line. Who do we have? Yeah.
It's George.
Hey, George, what's going on, man? Are you locked on these two games right now?
Mark, I'm on the West Coast, and it's getting to be late. You know what I mean? I know it's got to be like midnight where you're at.
Yeah, that's not late for me, but go ahead. What's on your mind?
I'm watching this unfold before my very eyes. Wisconsin's going to beat Iowa 21-17.
Yeah, we're watching two games at the same time here.
Right, and I have all this on a betting pool, and I have to have Stanford, and they done won that game. Whoa! Oh my God, what a fun night!
Yeah, they did just win it. Yeah, Justin
You
Herbert.
told me when I called you all worried. You told me that I took the best teams, and I said it wasn't me; it was Uncle Lou that picked them before the season began. That what a nail biter! What a nail biter!
Yeah, I told you that Stanford and Wisconsin are the better teams on this particular night, though I had selected Oregon to win the game, which they certainly should have. They had the game won. All they had to do is kneel down.
Absolutely.
All they had to do is kneel down.
No way. Yeah. There's no way anybody would have picked Stanford on this game. I got lucky.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of luck. I got a little unlucky this week. This was one of my weeks to be a little bit unlucky with a bunch of picks. It happened to me a bunch of times. And this could be one right here. Even though I picked Wisconsin to win, I picked Iowa plus the 3 points, and they may end up losing by 4, and I'm going to lose the game by 1 point. But that's the way it goes.
43 seconds left. Don't give up.
That's the way it goes. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, let's see what can possibly happen in 43 seconds.
You win money 1 week, and the next week, well, the game's over because the Iowa back out of the backfield. Let's see who that was.
Yes. My God! Did Wisconsin just catch that ball?
You gotta catch the ball. The ball's thrown right to you. Yeah, that's not on the quarterback. That's on the back out of the backfield, or the wide receiver there. Yeah, that's.
Wow. I won 3 out of 4 games this week. I won Florida, Wisconsin, and Stanford.
Very good.
Imagine that. That would have been that's a rough week. You had to sweat it out to the last second.
Yeah.
Except for Florida.
For me, every game pretty much broke the wrong way in the last couple seconds. It was just one of those weeks for me. What can I say?
There's nothing more fickle than betting on college football.
Well, you need to stick around 3:15 to 3:30 on an NFL Sunday. I don't know. It's pretty close. It's pretty close.
Hey, I want to say something. You know, Tennessee Roadshow, Volunteer Roadshow, Catfish. You know that guy.
Yes, I don't know him.
He's sitting in a car right now with a live broadcast. I was waiting on a phone call when you went live, and I hung up. Because he's getting tired. It's hot in the car. He just got out of the hospital. And he's trying to answer like 100 phone calls from fans. So I hung up out of kindness, you know. But you want to three-way him or what? I'm just teasing you.
I'm sorry, I missed that, George.
Well, okay, I'm going to make a comment about the Tennessee-Florida game.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what happened? Did you see that?
Well, I'm always trying to watch 4 games at the same time, so that that one was quickly one that I wouldn't be watching very, very soon because
we had like 5
obviously it was out of hand very quickly.
Yeah. And so I don't think it's really an indictment against Tennessee because once in a while a game gets out of hand, right? Big stage, bunch of freshmen.
I guess I most of the turnovers that I saw and the misplays were Tennessee players making stupid plays. So it's not necessarily where you can say that was bad coaching. You know, the Tennessee player.
I'm a Gator, so I have no reason to say this. I'm going to tell you something, Mark. Out of the next 3 games, they got Auburn, LSU, and Alabama. That's Tennessee's schedule.
Oh, yeah.
And I predict they will win one of those games. I mean, in the SEC, if you check all the recruiting, who has the best teams, Tennessee's even above Florida. So don't nobody think Tennessee can't win a game. Yes, they can. You know?
Oh, sure. They will win games in the SEC this year.
Yeah. I wouldn't be taking no 20-point spread against Tennessee. I'll tell you that.
I don't know about that stretch of games, but they'll win against somebody.
Yeah. Well, I know. Just 1 out of 3 for the fans of Tennessee. Otherwise, this win doesn't look any good for Florida. I'm only thinking about myself.
Of course you think about yourself. You're
Go Gators.
Of course you think about yourself. You're a Florida fan, and it was a big win today.
I tried to tell everybody to fear the mighty Gators, but did they listen? No. They don't listen.
You did. I told you a few nights ago that you guys were going to win by a couple scores, and then I didn't heed my own advice at the time.
Yeah. I only predicted 41-14, so I was wrong too.
Well, you were about as right as anybody I could imagine being right.
You know what? That's a case of a blind squirrel finding a nut. I finally did it, I guessed right.
Definitely. I want to see what's on everybody's minds. We had a crazy college football Saturday.
I know. We got to go.
I don't know if anybody else wants to call. 860-325-3687. George, thanks, and congratulations.
And if you're from Tennessee, please don't kill yourself. You're going to win one of the next 3 games, I promise.
Okay.
You're going to beat somebody good.
That's a guarantee from George.
Because I love Tennessee. I just do. I'm a Gator, and I love Tennessee. They have a proud tradition, and they got big players. They all weigh 400 pounds. They can do it. They'll be fine.
All right, George. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it. We're going to see what everybody else wants to talk about here.
Later.
All right, George, talking about the Gators, of course, Florida with a big win over Tennessee. It wasn't much of a game. It was a game in which I wanted to watch, but it was 23-3 before you could turn around, and there you go. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello? Okay, I had 2 calls coming in at the same time, and for some reason, it didn't take either one of them. Just if you have an issue, just keep calling. Why is it not taking my call? What's going on here? Hello? Try this again.
Call or 2 to decline.
Hello, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello? What is going on here?
2 to decline. The call will
I hit number 1, as I always do. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
It's Big Poppy JT.
Hey, Big Poppy. How you doing today, man?
Good. So I just have 3 things I want to say. You was right about the Texas A&M and Alabama game.
Well, I was pretty right. Unfortunately, from a betting standpoint, Texas A&M had to throw in a garbage touchdown, which burned me at the end. But yeah, I was right about basically how the game was going to go. Appreciate that.
And Oregon, I've never seen. I had 2 takes from the Oregon game. I've never seen a team single-handedly lose a college football game by themselves. They literally lost the game by themselves. And my second take on the Oregon game is Justin Herbert just showed the country that he is the best NFL quarterback right now. We saw Drew Lock play earlier against Georgia. He struggled. I won't blame the lack of talent because some of those throws were strictly on him. I mean, he had an average performance, but I expected more. Justin Herbert just put the world on notice that he is the best NFL prospect quarterback as of right now. I was impressed by his vision. That was what every scout has a problem with, his vision. Is he able to progress through all his reads? He did that tonight, and he's a large reason why Oregon was actually a big favorite. Well, a reason why I thought they would win this game. So he was very impressive. And and my third take is MarkRogersTV going to keep being the bonehead coach? And is he going to start Malik Rozier next game? Or is he just going to get over himself and start N'Kosi Perry next game? Because N'Kosi Perry came into the game against FIU, and this dude could not be stopped. And all the throws he made, Malik Rozier couldn't make a single one of any of those throws. So I'm eager to see what us as Miami fans are going to do and how we're going to react if he starts Malik Rozier next game against UNC, which is a Thursday night game, which a lot of you guys like to call a trap game. So I'm eager to see what he does, because if he starts Malik Rozier, Miami fans, as the Miami fan base, we need to put pressure on him as the fan base and tell MarkRogersTV to start N'Kosi Perry, because he gives us the best chance to win, and we saw it today.
So, Big Poppy, I was away from college football until about 5 o'clock. I'm usually locked in from the kickoff at noon. So I had some other obligations. I was away until 5 o'clock. Of course, at that point, I'm catching up on all the big 3:30 games and then carry through the night. So I only saw the score on the Miami game, which I was pleased with just because I picked FIU with the 26 points. So they only won by 2 touchdowns at 31-17. So did you get a chance to see a Rozier play today? And I'm trying to pronounce his name correctly. It looks like Rozier. We've all been saying Rozier for 3 or 4 years, but they say in the game broadcast Rozier. But anyway, regardless, Malik, did you see his play today? So you're telling me, just based on the past, that Perry should be playing, or did Malik play an especially bad game today?
No, Malik Rozier, I believe when I started watching the game, I saw N'Kosi Perry came in, but apparently before the game, MarkRogersTV had a game plan that he said he was bent on getting N'Kosi Perry in the third drive of the game. So they put him in. Malik Rozier was 4-4. No, it was 3 or 4, I believe. But N'Kosi Perry just went in for the third drive, I guess, because, I don't know, I guess it was just a game plan decision. So he really wasn't, MarkRogersTV really didn't plan on him starting the rest of the game. But when he put him in, you're just going to take him out because he just out the hot hand. Malik Rozier was 3 or 4, but N'Kosi Perry, his first drive went 4-4, 71 yards and 1 touchdown. And the reason why the game really probably would have covered your spread, but, Miami had to substitute the backups and the second string and the reserves, and those are probably the reason why you weren't able to cover it.
No, I was good with not covering it. I took FIU in the 26.5 points.
I'm gonna start trying to figure out more about spreads, because it seems that's what everybody is interested in.
Well, my suggestion there, Big Poppy, is to get involved with whatever you're interested in. Not try to cajole yourself to be interested in something, just to kind of contrive yourself to be interested in something. Like I know people that don't care much about football, but because people around them love football, they play in fantasy football leagues just to make themselves interested in something. That I wouldn't suggest that myself, just because people are playing the point spreads, that you would get into it. If you love college football and love football in general for other reasons, you watch football for the reasons you want to watch football. That's my advice.
I agree.
All right, Big Poppy.
And,
anything else, man?
Yeah, I want to talk about the Tulane quarterback. Ohio State made him look like garbage.
The first one or the second one? The first one, Banks. Jonathan Banks. Yep.
Yes, he actually has a rising NFL draft stock before the game. and he's transferred from like 3 different colleges. This is his 4th college. He had a mid-4th round projection, and I don't know how bad you guys made him look, so it's probably going to go down, but he's one of those sleeper type quarterbacks, and a lot of scouts feel like he could rise up and be kind of the next Patrick Mahomes, maybe. So that's all I want to say. I can't wait for the Ohio State and Penn State game. Penn State almost lost to Illinois despite the box scores. Illinois was very, very impressive that game, and they could have won that game. But that's all I wanted to talk about. Thanks for having me on.
So Jonathan Banks went 8 for 14 for $141, no touchdowns, no interceptions. That was his line before they brought in Justin McMillan, the former LSU quarterback. All right, Big Papi.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the support. We will talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Good night.
There is Big Papi JT. Also, George calling in. Wild night of college football. Of course, the big games during prime time, East Coast time. Oregon blowing a 24-7 lead, and it was even worse than that in icing the game, or trying to, in the last 50 seconds, and fumbling at the 40-yard line, and Stanford takes over, moves it 45 yards for the Jet Toner field goal to win it. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, DeAndre, how you doing, Mark?
Hey, DeAndre. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Great.
Great night. Betting went good, but I learned to stay away from South Florida when betting, because they'll never cover the spread.
Yeah, they're tough to do.
Yeah, because they got me with Illinois and East Carolina. I hated to go against East Carolina, but I thought East Carolina and South Florida would put up some points, but they didn't. So it was a good night other than that one. Other than that game. Well,
your Clemson Tigers pulled through for me, because I had them giving 15 points, and they had no issues today.
Well, it didn't look good at first. Georgia Tech moved the ball, but what about Old Dominion upsetting Virginia Tech?
Yeah, so I only saw the highlights of that game. 28-point underdog, Old Dominion. It reminds me of the time, let's see, this was about 10 or 12 years ago, when one of the greatest upsets in college football history occurred, when Virginia Tech, ranked in the top 10 at the time, lost to James Madison. They lost to Temple, but they also, that was a few years later. They lost to Temple when they were in the top 25, but they were ranked like in the top 7 or 8 in the nation, and they lost to James Madison. What I did see from that game, and I am anxious to see the highlights, is I saw the ODU wide receivers completely outplaying the corners for Virginia Tech in that game, outfighting them for balls, winning 50-50 jump balls, and the quarterback placing the ball in the right spot. So the passing game for ODU, based on the highlights, really took the Virginia Tech defense apart. And obviously they scored 49 points.
Right. Well, that brings me to my next point. I'm interested in seeing what Duke is going to do against them next week. I know Duke's starting quarterback will be back, but Virginia Tech starting quarterback is out. So I've been picking Duke to win the ACC Coastal the whole year. So this is a big game for them. I mean, I still think there's a lot of good teams in the ACC, and it's going to be interesting how it turned out. But Virginia's got a certain quarterback. I know they're not great, but I heard some people was like, take the money line with this with Virginia and Louisville, because Louisville, nobody thought Virginia was going to beat Louisville. And I don't know what's wrong with Louisville, but I listened to some people. I took the money line, and I've been watching that quarterback play the whole year, and he was just killing people. Really athletic. So I was kind of disappointed that Louisville didn't win, but I should have picked against Virginia when I done seen Virginia play a lot this year. Only reason why they lost to Indiana because they had like a bunch of rain delays. But I can't wait to see Virginia Tech and Duke and I think it's Carolina, Miami. I don't know where they play at. I think they play Miami this year. But it's gonna be interesting to see how the ACC shakes out.
Okay, the only issue I have with DeAndre, anything that you said there, is that I gotta say, when you said that there's a lot of good teams in the ACC, can you point those teams out for me? Now, I agree that it's going to be a very competitive ACC below Clemson in the Atlantic, and the entire Coastal looks like it's going to be competitive. But in terms of those being really good teams, I don't see them. I think the ACC has been extremely disappointing. Boston.
Yeah, I probably misspoke.
Boston College went to Purdue today and lost by 17 points.
Yeah, what a 1-3 Purdue team at that. I was kind of shocked about that, but yeah, you're right. There's not a bunch of good teams, but it's gonna be a competitive year. I can't figure out what's going on with some of those teams, but they college kids, so you never know what's on their mind. But we'll see. We'll see, but I still think it Duke the winner. I don't know the quarterback situation with Duke, but it doesn't look like Virginia Tech's quarterback will be there either.
Exactly. Who does Clemson have next week?
Syracuse.
Okay.
We're gonna see how that's gonna turn out. I wish they make it in mind either start Lawrence or play Kelly Bryant, but I mean I guess it's working right now. Syracuse, they're up tempo. Clemson got enough depth this year to deal with it compared to last year. I think a lot of players were hurt last year, but Higgins and Pickett should help out with the defensive lineman rotation. And I thought that will help us this year compared to last year. Because I did pick Syracuse to beat Clemson last year, and they don't have those tall receivers for jump balls like they did last year. I don't know what happened to the kid that played wide receiver. He transferred from Maryland and went to Syracuse, but I think he graduated, but I don't know if he went in the draft. So I'm interested to see what Clemson's going to do, because Dungy's going to challenge them, the corners, and that's Clemson's biggest weakness is the cornerbacks on defense. Quarterback play sometimes is shaky, but it looks like they got the running game going. So it's going to be a pretty big game against Syracuse.
Yeah, so between Eric Dungy, who's more of a running threat, he's a really good passing quarterback, but he's more of a running threat than their backup, the 4-star Tommy DeVito. It's going to be interesting because, as you mentioned, Syracuse, the one matchup on the field that they may not necessarily have a big advantage, but they've got a fighting chance, is exactly what you're talking about. Their wide receivers, even though they lost the two kids, they caught almost 200 passes combined last year. Jamal Custis is the best wide out for Syracuse this year, is that they've got a fighting chance on the outside to make some plays. But, of course, it's going to be on the Syracuse offensive line to give Dungy and or DeVito some time to get the ball downfield. And it's going to be interesting to see how Dino Babers plays it, whether he tries to maybe use the up-tempo early, especially early. He's going to use the up-tempo the entire game because that's the offense that they run, but they especially probably will come out quick early to try to get some traction early, and then they'll take some shots downfield when they think that they've got Clemson on its heels. Maybe they've got not a big chance in this game, but it will be interesting to see the pass offense of Syracuse against Clemson's defense, because I thought, obviously in this game this afternoon, Georgia Tech just doesn't provide that kind of a threat downfield, and Taquan Marshall is a running quarterback. He's a running back at quarterback, and your defensive line, of course, dominated today. I saw Mark Fields drop an interception that was pretty much like a punt at midfield that he could have run back forever, but sat on the field for a few seconds contemplating that. But you guys broke a ton of big plays on offense, both in the passing game and the rushing game. I saw Trevor Lawrence throw one kind of a fluke of an interception on a inside screen play where he hit the offensive lineman and it got picked off. But you guys were in good shape.
I'll let you go.
All right, DeAndre.
Notre Dame looked better. Notre Dame does look better on offense.
Yeah.
Today.
Well, they put in the kid that at quarterback that can throw it. Ian Book.
You got what's the guy that went to the NFL early? Because they were talking about how good he was during the Wimbush, how good he was, but while Kaiser was still there, I thought Wimbush would be a breakout, but it obviously he didn't throw the ball past 5 yards. So it's good that they have put in somebody that can throw the ball. Just like Clemson, they sometimes you need somebody to throw the ball. I know they got to go with experience, but you just need somebody that can throw that ball. That's just. You have a great night, Morris, and enjoy the rest of the night and the games. Hopefully, Washington can pick up the offense over here.
All right, Andre. I'm kind of pulling for Arizona State here. I got 18 points, so we'll see if they can keep it close at least.
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. Have a good night. Got our calls from Big Poppy, DeAndre, and George tonight. 860-325-3687. We've enjoyed a great day of college football. Another call's coming in right now, so we will take that. I could be up till 3 o'clock in the morning a lot analyzing these games. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.
Hi, this is Bash.
Bash, how you doing today?
What's good? Oh, today was wild. Hey, I have a little bit of video, actually, but I forgot about that thing. I went to the Ohio State game today.
Okay.
I forgot about what you said a couple days ago. It was in my mind Friday night when I was like, because Thursday night I was confirmed that I was going to the game, and then Friday night I thought about it, and I was going to do it, and I totally forgot. But what a crazy day. Like, we're talking a couple of upsets, but they were pretty lopsided. Like, for example, Mississippi State, Kentucky. I even had Mississippi State covering. This is my worst week so far against the spread, which right now I'm 2-2, pending the Arizona State-Washington game, which I got Arizona State covering.
Okay, me too.
But yeah, this is the worst game, or worst week I've had against the spread thus far. But and Oklahoma State getting throttled by Texas Tech. I think that's really the most, other than Old Dominion pulling off the upset, which, I can go on and on about how crazy it is. Other than Old Dominion beating Virginia Tech, because that is just, that is insane. What do you think is like the biggest upset for today?
So I know that you were listening a few times when I went through the number of upsets we had the first 3 weeks. That pretty much, if you run the numbers week to week, and obviously it's going to vary, but if you put all the weeks together, you need to look for about 20 to 25% of the time for there to be an upset. And I'm even talking about a 2 or 3 point underdog winning a game, like Wisconsin and Iowa almost tonight, and Oregon at 2.5 almost tonight, but it didn't happen in those two games, but it looked like it was going to. So if we look through the games this week, on Friday we had no upsets. Then on Saturday we had Purdue +7 winning straight up by 17. We had, of course, the monumental game that you just mentioned, Virginia Tech, a 27 or 28-point favorite, losing to Old Dominion. So there's 2 of a pretty substantial favor. Yeah, that's crazy. We had Texas, a 3.5-point underdog, winning at home. So there's 3. And then we've got, as you mentioned, Kentucky, a 9.5-point underdog winning. There's 4. Texas Tech, a 2-touchdown underdog winning. There's 5. And then that's it. We almost had 2 just now, again, with Iowa and Oregon, but it didn't happen. So out of the 26 games that I picked, 5 have been
Oklahoma.
Outright upsets. Okay, I'm talking about the
Oklahoma.
Well, Army didn't win the game.
It wasn't outright, but it almost happened.
Sure, it almost happened.
Army,
sure. Yep.
Army was down there. No one's going to really realize this because, of course, they had pay-per-view, and I was upset about that because I was really wanting to watch the end of that game. I ended up catching the end of it in the entire overtime on a radio broadcast. But I wanted to watch that so bad, and I was kind of upset by that. But yeah, Army had the ball actually at the Oklahoma 30, and they had a 3rd and 6, 7 yards, and they threw an interception. Oklahoma drove down, had a field goal missed at the end of regulation.
Yeah.
It's a crazy game.
Bash, I'm about to start a segment on bad beats. I think it's about time because I just, man, I don't know if you saw the end of the Illinois game on Friday night against Penn State. Illinois had a 24-21 lead at one point in the 3rd quarter, and I still wasn't easy with taking Illinois in 28 points. But still, when they're up by 3 in the 3rd quarter and you got 28 points, you're thinking, okay, just, you can give up 4 touchdowns and still be okay. But of course, it's Illinois. So they give up 35-0 in the 4th quarter. But on top of that, so Penn State's got the ball. There's 3 minutes left. They're up 25. They are just milking the clock. If they were trying to end the game, and Illinois has given up 14 and 15-yard runs just over and over and over, and I'm like, come on, just tackle somebody and end this game. So it's 3rd and 18, Bash. And again, Penn State's up 25. I've got Illinois in 27.5. Penn State throws an incomplete pass. I'm like, beautiful. Kid defensive back from Illinois comes out of nowhere and just blindsides the wide receiver way after the play's over. 15-yard unnecessary roughing penalty. Penn State gets the ball back. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Next play, they heave it to the end zone. Touchdown. They cover. Crazy.
That kind of sucks, man. I was really surprised with Mississippi State too, and this
I was too.
I'm going to go because I'm just kind of. I mean, when I picked Mississippi State to cover, but I knew that game would be closer than like. I was thinking, okay, Mississippi State's going to cover, but I think they're going to only win by like 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. 2
touchdowns and a field goal, maybe something like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is a game that goes down to the wire. But 7-28, Nick Fitzgerald, 135 yards passing. Like they're too talented to be only scoring 7. I mean, Kentucky's clearly a good team. They're definitely going to be in my top 25.
They better be in the top 25 this week. Come on.
The top 20. Like that team looked fantastic on both sides of the ball. That defense looks really good. But I mean, come on, Mississippi State. I was expecting a little more from you. Mississippi State is supposed to be one of the top teams in terms of NFL draft prospects this year. From rounds 1 through 7, they're supposed to be one of the more drafted teams. And you know, when you do that, it's just kind of upsetting to watch, especially when you're someone who's been promoting Mississippi State being an underrated team. If you're one of those teams who's been supporting Mississippi State like I have been and saying, this team is really good, they can push in the West, and then they lay an egg like that, you got to be disappointed. Well, there's my rant for the night. Talk to you later. I'll see you later, Mark.
All right, Bash Gaming. Appreciate it. Bash, George, Big Poppy JT, DeAndre joining the show tonight. We're at 860-325-3687. I will put the number in the chat. Remember that we've got a newsletter, The Voice of College Football, that comes out every Monday, and people seem to like it. So if you want some great college football information, you'll get a channel update from me. You'll also get my take on the weekend. But more than that, people seem to love the stats, trends, and facts that I provide. And we will have a whole bunch of those coming up Monday afternoon for you. So that's the Voice of College Football newsletter. Just send your email address to MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. Your email address to MarkRogersTV@gmail.com, and we'll get you the newsletter each and every Monday. There is the phone line at 860-325-3687. All right. As I go through the games here, since we were talking the betting angle, on Friday night, Central Florida, 13-point favorite, wins by 20. Illinois, again, is a 27.5-point selection on my part, getting those points, led by 3 in the 3rd quarter, but Illinois so bad and Penn State so explosive, I knew it wasn't safe, and Illinois makes this stupid, unnecessary roughness foul with 3 minutes left to give Penn State the ball back and complete the comeback and the point spread win. Penn State, of course, was going to win regardless. They won at 63-24. USC wins by 3. Big win for the Trojans, finally winning in the Pac-12 against Washington State at the Coliseum. So big win in terms of real football play on the field. In terms of the line, USC not covering the 4.5. So I had a bad night against the spread there at 1 and 2. Georgia, the line was between 14 and 15, depending on your play, and it certainly mattered because the Bulldogs beat Drew Lock and company 43-29 by 14 points. Michigan completely blew the line away in defeating poor hapless Nebraska 56-10. I got that game on DVR. I don't know if I'm going to check it out because it may be a waste of my time, but I just wanted to see what would happen there with Michigan and Nebraska. Thought it would be a little bit better game than that. Maybe one of the surprises of the day was Purdue as a 7-point underdog at home, beating Boston College by 17 points. Bama, Texas A&M, some thought that A&M would be up to the challenge and make it a good game. They did not. Alabama pretty much from the time it was about 21-10 cruised on to victory at 45-23, but did not cover the 26. Clemson, Georgia Tech, Tigers much better than Georgia Tech, winning 49-21, covering the 2 touchdowns. Tulane at Ohio State. Buckeyes led this one 42-6 at halftime. Then they really laid off. And this game stayed at 42-6 until late in the game. Ohio State scored with like 30 seconds left, and that proved the difference if you were a betting person on this game, because Tulane was getting 37-38 points. They were down 42-6, so they were covering at the time, but the Buckeyes scored with about 30 seconds left. And, of course, the way this game was going, Ohio State could have scored 1,000,000 points at 42-6 at halftime, but they did cover late. West Virginia covered against Kansas State very easily at 35-6. Will Greer and company looking very good against a quality, decent team, but Kansas State also lost at home to Mississippi State by 21 points. Virginia Tech, Old Dominion. I saw some highlights on the game, but I've got to look at the numbers on this game. Virginia Tech, a 28-point favorite, loses to ODU, and Virginia Tech choosing to go to ODU, much like they do East Carolina in play, and they lose. Non-conference, the ACC looking bad again in the non-conference games. BC losing to Purdue, and Virginia Tech as a 4-touchdown favorite losing on the road. So a lot of big upsets today in terms of big games, but also big point spreads. Miami, workmanlike over FIU. They win by 14, 26.5-point favorite there. South Carolina, just a 2.5-point pick in Nashville against Vandy. Blow out the Commodores. Vandy, many of us thought, including myself, would have a bit of a letdown after putting a big effort up against Notre Dame in South Bend, almost pulling off that game. They come back home, and they really let down, and South Carolina wins it 37-14, cover the 2.5. Texas with a huge win, maybe the biggest win of the day in conference, with a Big 12 win to get the inside track against Oklahoma, possibly for a Big 12 championship berth. So those of you who were completely making fun of me and bashing me after I picked Texas to make the Big 12 championship game, after they lost to Maryland, which, let's remember, has nothing to do with the Big 12, Texas then wins over USC, scoring 34 consecutive points. Of course, that game has nothing to do with the Big 12. I understand the point. You're looking and evaluating play on the field, but Texas takes a major step toward a Big 12 championship game, defeating TCU at home today. I think that game was 31-16. BYU, McNeese State, insignificant. Army, OU could have been the shocker of the day and the season, but OU survives with an interception in overtime, 28-21. Can't wait to look at the box score on that game. Louisiana Tech at LSU. This is a game that LSU led quickly, 21-0. Louisiana Tech has given no indication in winning 2 games that they were going to be able to challenge LSU. But these are the kind of games throughout the years under first Les Miles, now Ed Orgeron, because LSU is challenged offensively in terms of explosive plays or lack thereof, that they let these teams hang around. And it happened today. It went from 21-0 to 24-21. LSU scored a couple touchdowns late to win by 17. They were a 21-point favorite. Mississippi State, Kentucky, huge game for both teams as they need to win in the SEC. Kentucky is now 2-0 in the SEC for the first time since, I believe, 1977. So they beat Florida for the first time since 1984, breaking a 31-game losing streak to the Gators. Then they turn around and beat Mississippi State by 21 points, not only beating the Bulldogs as a 9.5-point underdog, but Kentucky. Let's start to give Kentucky a little play. Now, of course, we have here at Mark Rogers TV with Kevin McGuffey. We did instant analysis when they beat Florida. We talked them up this week in preparation for Mississippi State. But as a almost double-digit underdog, Kentucky wins, and they were already in my top 25 as a 3-0 team, having beaten Florida on the road. And now maybe some people will join me in getting Kentucky into the top 25. Also, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. Bash Gaming alluded to this game. Another shocker as Texas Tech goes on the road. They're down early. They come back. They blow out Oklahoma State on the road in Stillwater. So Texas Tech, Jekyll and Hyde, they lost to, well, they did beat Houston by 14 points. They lost to Ole Miss by 20. Maybe this is furthering the argument about the SEC being the best conference by far. If you connect the dots and choose to do it that way. Florida, Tennessee, the Gators just were the beneficiary of a ton of Tennessee mistakes on offense, but they also just completely manhandled Tennessee up front. That was a game that I was looking forward to watching, but it got out of hand so quickly, and there were other games to watch at 7 o'clock, and I was watching the end of the 3:30 games that by the time I got around to Tennessee, Florida, it's like 23-3. So there was no reason to watch. So Gators cover the 4.5 points and get an important win in the division. Arkansas, Auburn, for you bettors out there, you're either loving it or hating it because Auburn was a 30-point favorite. They won by 31 over the Hogs. Michigan State, Indiana. A lot of people liked Indiana as a possible upset winner at home. They were a 6-point underdog. They got down early. They made some bad interceptions. Pick 6 going Michigan State's way to make it 14-0. Indiana comes back from 28-7 down to make it interesting at 28-21. Can't close the deal. Michigan State wins. Stanford-Oregon, game of the day, most important game, in addition to TCU and Texas, and any in-conference games in which the teams are still undefeated at this point, extremely important. So let's not discard the Kentucky win. Could be huge. Other games, of course, Wisconsin, Iowa, huge. And Wisconsin, Iowa, considering the landscape of that division, probably the most important game today, because that would seem to be the game between the two teams that are the most prominent in that division, where you can't really see any other teams getting in Iowa or Wisconsin's way in that division. Where TCU, Texas, they're both going to have to deal with Oklahoma and West Virginia and Oklahoma State, and they're going to have to deal with a lot of other teams as well. Same thing even in the Pac-12 North. For as big as this win was for Stanford over Oregon, there's still Washington sitting there for both teams. That said, Oregon blows it, 24-7 lead. Justin Herbert on fire, 25 of 27 at one point in the game, late in the game after regulation. But Stanford comes back with a 24-7 spurt in the second half. They win 31-28, I believe was the final. Yeah, 31-28. And again, Wisconsin, Iowa, late touchdown by Alex Hornibrook with about 55 seconds left. Leads Wisconsin to the win on the road at Kinnick in that one, 21-17. We're still awaiting Washington, Arizona State. Of course, the Huskies trying to avenge a loss that was almost inexplicable, where Arizona State was ragged on defense last year, but the Huskies went to Tempe, and on one particular late night Pac-12 at night game, they get held to one touchdown by Arizona State, shut out through 3 quarters, lose 13-7. That cost them a college football playoff berth, but they're making amends for it right now. But it's still a close game at 17-10 as they kick off the second half. I will certainly want to lock in on the fourth quarter of this game. But in the meantime, I'd like to hear from you guys, 860-325-3687. Thanks for jumping on the line. Sorry for my absence most of the day. But I had some other obligations till about 5 o'clock this afternoon. So I was playing catch up with the 3:30 games and then into the primetime games. Had my boy with me watching the late night games, Iowa, Wisconsin, and also Stanford-Oregon. We were keeping our eye on Michigan State, Indiana. And if you know the tales that I've told about my son in amongst all that college football, and I got 2 laptops on shares plus the TV, he's needing me once the Indians and the Red Sox went to extra innings to go to at least the at-bats for the Tribe against Boston. So we did that and had some fun watching the Indians, and they pulled it off with a Michael Brantley single in the bottom of the 12th inning, I believe, in beating Boston. All right. I would love to check out some of these box scores because I'm kind of intrigued to see some of the performances in terms of numbers as we take another call here. Here we go.
The call will start at the beep.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. Man, I'm a first-time caller. You've probably seen me in the comments section. My name's Reasonable Gump.
Absolutely. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Thanks for calling.
As my name suggests, I'm an Alabama fan. Thought I'd go and get that out of the way.
You've got to be pretty pleased with what you saw today.
Yeah, I am. It was a lot of people, 2 weeks ago said Ole Miss is going to be Alabama's first test, and it really wasn't a test. And then everyone just says, "Oh, well, Texas A&M will be the first test," and it was pretty much the same. I got to say, if people were looking for a weakness on Alabama's defense, there really is not much anything new. Alabama's always kind of had trouble with mobile quarterbacks, and pretty much all of Texas A&M's points came off Kellen Mond breaking away. But if we could just, control those big outbursts like that, I think the score would have been a lot more further apart than it ended up being.
Yeah, so the only issue I would have with that is that I need your team to close the deal on the point spread, because I pretty much I nailed this pick, but then the late touchdown kind of did me in, because Alabama obviously was up 45-16, up by 29, and let the garbage time touchdown in. But certainly there was a difference between Texas A&M, number one, having to play in Tuscaloosa, in comparison to Ole Miss being able to play at home. And number two, after the 75-yard play out of the gate that Ole Miss pulled off, the bomb down the left sideline, they obviously got annihilated. Whereas Texas A&M, it was 14-10, it was 21-10, it was like 21-13. They were within range. They played a really good first half, midway into the third quarter game.
They definitely did, and hey, I was getting just a little on the edge of my seat there in the first half, particularly when I'll know how much of the game you watch, but we were in our own red zone in the second quarter.
Yep.
And we got a holding, so it backed it up 1st and 20. And freaking Mike Locksley, I haven't had a problem with his play calling until now, but 1st and 20, and we try a run, and then 2 little screen passes that might get 4 yards. We ended up getting backed up 5 further. I was like, oh, okay, wait a second. You're telling me now at 1st and 20 ended up being 3rd and 25. Now is when we don't trust our quarterback to throw it downfield. I didn't like that at all. But that was just one series. So we ended up blowing we blew the gates off.
Do you remember what the score was at that point? Because I did see that series. I saw about half the game.
It was, I believe, 14-7 at that point. It was still a game.
So
actually, after that, it was after, because we had to punt it from our own end zone, and we punted it to them, and they came down and got a field goal and closed it to 10-14.
Yeah. Yep.
Of course, and that's as close as they got.
Yeah, I remember that series, and I didn't necessarily dissect it as well as you did, because your team, like I wasn't thinking, it wasn't really registering like that. But thinking back, yeah, they threw that little screen pass, I think Najee Harris on the left sideline, and he was like kind of trapped, had no blocking over there. It was just, it was an odd sequence of play calling, and Tua's done enough at this point that he takes care of that football. He's not a gunslinger like carelessly. He's a gunslinger like, I've got this much talent, I can make the throws, but they're not careless throws.
They look careless. So, like, a lot of people analyze them as being wild and, oh my God, what if the safety had played it right, or what if he had just an inch to the right and it would have been intercepted? Well, you know what? It wasn't an inch to the right. It was a catch, because Tua seems to, I don't know how he does it. Our first touchdown pass was almost a mirror image of the national championship last year. Was just straight right down the left sideline. Just you could not throw that ball any better. I mean, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about our what we got going on this year. This is the first time when I've watched an Alabama team just light up the scoreboard, you know, like we're doing. And the thing is, we didn't even have to trade our defense to do it, because, you know, normally teams they're either like a really good defense and kind of an average offense. That was Alabama. They have a gunslinging offense and no defense to speak of. That's the Big 12. Yep. And then, or you might be kind of in the middle ground of both of them. Rarely do you ever see teams that score 40 to 50 points a game and they shut down just as well on defense. Those teams are really rare.
So I'm going to ask you kind of a two-layered question about your team, and I don't know how much you get to see other teams play, but obviously the most apparent challengers in your own conference would be LSU and Auburn, and then to another degree Georgia, because that seems to be the inevitable game that's going to be played in Atlanta. Right. Your thoughts about those three teams challenging Bama?
Yeah, I'd love to give you my thoughts on that. So I was I'll start with LSU. I was one of the few people who believed in LSU going into the season. A lot of people didn't give them credit. I noticed a lot of hate out there for Ed Orgeron just because he talks funny, and I think that's really unfair. But I picked them to beat Miami, and they throttled them. I was surprised when they beat Auburn at home. That was shocking to me. And so, and I definitely said going into that game, I was like, if they go down and do it, we got to take them seriously, because that proves that the Miami thing wasn't just a fluke win over an overrated Miami. You know, you go into Auburn and beat Auburn there, something neither Alabama nor Georgia could do last year. That's impressive. I mean, yeah, did Auburn kind of give them the game in the end with those pass interference calls and just put them in field goal range? Yeah, they did, but that's all part of it. I mean, if Auburn doesn't want to blame the refs, they should have just gotten too far ahead for LSU to have to kick a field goal. So, yeah, that's all part of it. And LSU took advantage of that. And they're a very good team. The thing about the LSU thing that doesn't really worry me, though, is every team that beats Alabama has a really good quarterback. Every single one. They have a Heisman caliber, dual threat quarterback that's slippery and can get out of the gate and can run and dodge tackles and then somehow turn around and throw a 30-yard bomb. Those are the kind of quarterbacks that are really a nightmare, or have been a nightmare for Alabama. And
so totally, not to interrupt, totally agree with you. Jarrett Stidham might be the exception. I'm scanning like the last 5 years, and I'm coming up with Stidham as the only exception.
Trevor Knight, possibly. You can argue Trevor Knight.
Yeah, Trevor Knight in the 13 Sugar Bowl, sure. Cardell Jones wasn't elusive, but he could certainly run people over. Yeah.
And I'll get to Auburn as of right now. That's why I'm not seeing LSU as a well. And I'm going to throw this out there. A lot of people who aren't Alabama fans will not know this. Alabama has almost more wins in Baton Rouge than we have in Tuscaloosa. That's a second home for us. I mean, I think there was a time period between it was some kind of 84, 86 or something to 2000 where we didn't lose a single game in Baton Rouge. So there is everyone says, Death Valley is one of the worst places to play, and I agree if you're any team not named Alabama or LSU. So I'm not really worried about any kind of home field advantage. I'm not really worried about Joe Burrow. I think LSU has a great team. They have a good defense, but I do not think they will be able to stop us once we get out there. Now, was there anything you wanted to add before I get to Auburn?
No, take it away. Auburn.
Okay, so Auburn. Yeah, so Jared Stidham's NFL pocket passer, and he'll definitely throw yards on us. No doubt there. We lost last year because we were the worst team in the country that week, and I'm a diehard Alabama fan. I'm saying that on public view YouTube right now. Tulane could have beaten us that week last year. We were making every mistake in the book. It was almost like Tennessee was tonight. I mean, we dropped 2 snaps in a row while trying to go down there and get within, make a late score to kind of get back in the game.
Yep.
We were dropping everything, fumbling the ball. I think Hurts threw an interception or 2. And let's give Auburn credit. They took advantage of every bit of that. And Auburn's a really good team at home. That's why I was surprised that LSU went down there and did it. Auburn's a much different team at home. Most if not all of their losses, well, obviously not all, but most of their losses come on the road. So, that's why we lost last year. That was like the one kind of exception where it wasn't all just because they had a great quarterback. Their running back was also running all over us. And they were out coaching us. They were a better team in every single way last year. That's not going to happen this year. I'm honestly not giving Auburn much of a chance at all. Even if they were undefeated coming into the Iron Bowl, I'm sorry, I just don't see it. Saban doesn't lose revenge games except Ole Miss, and that was a really bad fluke when that happened. 5 turnovers, but not against Auburn. And so, I'm not really. I'm not really worried about anyone left on the schedule. Obviously, they're college kids. Anything can kind of happen, and we'll see. But if Alabama plays like they have been, I'm not worried about either of them.
Georgia.
So here's the thing with them. Last year, I shouldn't even really be comparing last year because Georgia, for some reason, has backed off their passing game, and I don't understand it. They seem to be doing exactly what they did last year, and just to do like 8 or 9 passes a game, most of them little 4-yard screens, and then they try and run the ball to death because they're playing inferior opponents and they don't think they have to throw the ball. And I don't get that because once you get to a game where you have to throw the ball, you're going to get in trouble because you're not used to it. And I think that's what happened to Georgia when they went to Auburn last year, honestly. But I think this Alabama team with this kind of offense will just eventually just overtake Georgia right now. I'm biased. Obviously, I'm going to pick Alabama in that matchup. But just the way that we're lighting up the scoreboard right now, Tua is, one of the most accurate passers I've ever seen. And he's not even a pocket passer. He doesn't have to stand still to do it, and that's pretty remarkable when you see something like that. Like I said before, I know Jared Stidham beat us, but pocket passers like Jake Fromm don't tend to have that kind of luck usually against Alabama. And Georgia really didn't run us up and down the field during the game last year either. We were always in it. It was only 13-0 at halftime. So it's not like we were getting completely humiliated. But so I think I definitely see Alabama winning all 3 of those.
Yeah, I made the point in making my prediction video against Texas A&M that you have a dominant offensive line, as you typically do. You've got the very best stable of running backs in the nation, and you've got a number of 5-star wide receivers who are just lightning quick and elusive in space and just turn short gains into big gains. And now you've got a quarterback who has arm talent at the NFL level, makes the right decisions, throws the ball on time, puts it in the spot where it's supposed to be, depending on whether the defender's on a certain portion or whatever the coverage dictates, or if he's got a wide open receiver making a crossing route, for example, he puts it where the receiver can catch and run and make a move on a defender. Like, you put all that personnel that you typically have at those three positions, offensive line, running back, and wide receiver, with the quarterback that can make it all work and gel. And you go from a team that, let's face it, if Jalen Hurts has to play the entire national title game last year, you most likely lose that one for a second consecutive year. So you go from being basically the second best team in the country 2 consecutive years only because your quarterback's, I don't want to say subpar, because if you compared him across the nation, he would be a top 30 or 40 quarterback. But then you take him to arguably the best quarterback in the nation, and it's just an offense that, as you well know from watching the games, Louisville and Ole Miss aren't great by any stretch, and especially on defense, but they're not going to give up. Alabama could have scored, if they would have wanted to, 80 or 85 points in both of those games. And those teams aren't going to give up 80, 85 points to other teams. Alabama's that good offensively now.
No, honestly,
it's crazy.
If Ole Miss hadn't caught our secondary napping on the first play of the game,
yeah,
we would have shut them out.
That just made you mad. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I would like to speak a little bit about this quote unquote quarterback situation at Alabama, because we're getting so much heat for it, and I need to clarify things. So many people are coming up with these conspiracies. I even got screamed at it last Thursday night about it. But these conspiracies that Nick Saban is manipulating and tricking Hurts, like he still might have a starter job. That's why he's keeping him around, because he's desperate not to lose him to transferring or redshirting, so he gets to have 2 more years. And that, like, Nick Saban made this whole situation into a media show over the summer. And honestly, if anyone sits down, non-Alabama fans even, you've seen the guy talk. You see, he doesn't do that. He doesn't play mental manipulative games like that. Okay? He's basically, I have no doubt in my mind that probably before the season started, maybe even after the Louisville game, he probably went to Hurts and said straight up, I need to get a backup quarterback ready. Do you want the job? If not, if you want a red shirt, go ahead and tell me now, so I can put Mac Jones in the game and I can let him start taking the snaps during practice, because Jalen Hurts apparently takes half the snaps at practice. So this is not a game he's playing like musical quarterback chairs with this, just trying to keep him around. He's not desperate to keep him around. Hurts made the conscious decision to stay with Alabama, to get to take reps and practice and grow, because he still wants to be an NFL quarterback. Whether or not we think he can do that is irrelevant. He still wants to do it, and he's making the choice to stay with Alabama and all of its great receivers and offensive line and stuff, and and best trainers in the world, and get to just grow before he's going to probably, most likely, take a graduate transfer to another school and start and try to make his resume there. That's what he's doing. Hurts made the choice to stay, quote unquote, loyal to the program. Nick Saban didn't manipulate him into doing that, and that became obvious now when he's played 4 games in a row. If he wanted the red shirt, he could have not played any game at all. He might could have done the Louisville one, but he wouldn't have played after that. Keep 3 games in your pocket just in case down the road if God forbid, gets hurt. Obviously, he didn't do that. He's not thinking about redshirting. So I just want to make that clear. I don't know what your thoughts on it, but I think it's just ridiculous that people are insinuating, just trying to make a situation like Alabama's got, quote unquote, a bad quarterback situation going on, the media circus there. No, we don't. We have the best quarterback in the country and a really, really solid backup. That's what's going on.
So I don't have anything in particular to refute anything that you just said, because it all makes a lot of sense, and I don't think anything's played out or been said that would cause me to refute what you just said. I think some people had an issue with Nick Saban during the offseason not making the decision public that would seem to have been obvious. I don't have an issue with that because I don't think Nick Saban has an obligation to fans, alumni, or media to decide on a starting quarterback and make that public. I think he knew in the back of his head the entire time that there's no comparison between these two players, and the offense is a completely different product with Tua on the field. But I think partially just because of who he is, and he wants to keep the power and hold the power, and he's earned the right to be able to do that. And actually, any manager or coach of a team of that caliber or at this level, I believe, has that right. They don't owe the media or the fans anything except to announce the lineup and put the players on the field once the game starts. But a lot of people held that against him, not naming a starter when it seemed apparent to all of us that Tua was going to be the starter. And then just felt as though maybe there was a sense of loyalty there, which I would almost feel that was to Nick Saban's credit, to have a bit of loyalty toward Jalen Hurts to keep him in the at least from a perception standpoint in the running for the starting job, even though he knew better. And now that and he put him in the game specifically against Louisville. I'm trying to think, against Ole Miss, where it was still maybe somewhat competitive. Specifically in those games. Yeah. Out of respect, even though he shouldn't have been in there. And also Nick Saban having confidence in the rest of his team that they were going to be fine, that he wasn't really risking the game.
Yeah. I think most of it is just people trying to make something out of nothing, try to make themselves feel better is really what they're doing. I mean, to say that Alabama created a situation for themselves, I was like, what situation? A good situation, you mean? We won a championship and we got to keep the best quarterback in the nation, who, by the way, was apparently thinking about transferring. So if we hadn't put him in that game, not only would we have lost the game, we would have lost Tua. So I'll put myself in that situation every time. But yeah, and I think you're right. I think Saban did have some loyalty to Hurts. I think it probably pained him really that this was kind of happening. But he knew that the game has gotten to the point. The competition's gotten to the point where Alabama's got to have offense. We got to have a superstar quarterback now, and we've never had one. I think that's a testament right there to the amazingness of what Saban's been able to do. Is we've won all these championships with the exception of A.J. McCarron, with mostly average quarterbacks. But yeah, when he's got this guy right here, he can't say no to Tua. But I think it probably. I don't think he felt good about it. I think he definitely has loyalty to Hurts, and as well he should. Hurts never did a bad job for the team. He's just not a great passer.
Yeah, ironically, maybe the most explosive offense, maybe not the best offense, but the most explosive offense you had before this year was the year in 2014 with Blake Sims at quarterback that didn't get to the national championship game.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
Just appreciate you coming on. If you've got anything else, we'll certainly take it. One more time. What is your handle? I just want to make sure that I recognize it in the future.
You mean my YouTube name?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a Reasonable Gump.
Okay. Very good.
I don't know if you're an SEC guy, but Gump is a derogatory nickname that other SEC fans call Alabama fans.
Okay. I should know that. So my background with the SEC is that I was a sports director at a CBS station in Mississippi from 1994 to 2000. And we were just across the state line. So I covered Alabama, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. That was our beat. And so I was entrenched in it for 6 or 7 years. And obviously as a college football guy, and I now work at ESPN and have for the last 17 years, and then do this on the side that, as you can imagine, now I cover it from afar. But yeah, for 6, 7 years, I was, in the media box and in the on the sideline. So going to the news conferences and the whole deal. So yeah, it's a fervent down there. There's no doubt. It is fervent. All right.
That sounds like a really good, man. All right, man. Thanks for having me
it was a lot of fun. Reasonable Gump. We appreciate it. You have a good night. All right. First time caller there. Reasonable Gump. Big Alabama fan who had some interesting perspective on the quarterback situation in particular, and Alabama's chief rivals in the SEC, LSU and Auburn, coming up in division play, of course, and then the probable SEC championship game against Georgia in Atlanta. All right. Anybody else who wants to jump on the line, it's 860-325-3687. I could talk college football all night. There's so much that happened today. We've got a Washington-Arizona State game right now that seems as though Washington, even though it's only a one-score game, kind of has it under control because they've led the entire way, but it's only a one-score game. And Arizona State won this matchup in Tempe last year. We do have a call coming in. Again, it's 860-325-3687. I apologize. If you call when somebody else is on the line, you would have to call back. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line here?
Chris Harris.
Hey, Chris, what's going on, man?
I read an article on Sports Illustrated about an hour ago.
Okay.
I was wondering if you had any insight on it, but article stated that Ohio State was in progress of replacing Urban with Day next year.
So I know that David Pollock in particular was the most vocal that I heard when all this was going down, that even though Ohio State was putting on a good front in their support for Urban Meyer, that they just wanted to get through this season. They know that they have championship possibilities, and they wanted to not contradict the perception of what they were standing for and how they viewed this situation and Meyer's actions or lack of actions, and that they would get through this season and then be able to do that. So I've heard that, again, most notably from David Pollock, but I've heard that from a few other places. And maybe they wanted to see how the team looked for 3 weeks, especially against TCU with Ryan Day on the sideline. Of course, that's different from running a football program, just being on the sideline for 3 games and being the coach. So once Urban Meyer served that 3 weeks during August camp, he, of course, came back and was able to coach the team during those particular weeks leading to game day. But Ryan Day had to take it over on game day and had to, before that, of course, with the help of Greg Schiano and Kevin Wilson, run the team. But that's different than running the entire show, the entire program, recruiting and keeping up with scholarship issues and keeping these kids in line and the whole deal in running a program. But Ryan Day certainly seems as though he's going to be an excellent football coach and a leader of a football program in the future. But I can't confirm that. I would not be shocked in any way, shape, or form if that happened.
And another question I was wondering about is, obviously there's a lot of heat with Clay Helton at USC. You think if they fire Clay Helton and Ohio State decides to move on, they would make that offer at Urban?
USC and Urban Meyer. Well, you would think so. I've heard some speculation about Pete Carroll, and I don't necessarily know if that's been substantiated, but anytime that a college football program in particular has a successful coach who moves on and then has a few struggles, they're going to think that they can woo that particular coach back. And that's the thought of a lot of USC people about Pete Carroll. Urban Meyer wouldn't seem to be, from a geographical standpoint, just in terms of what his base has been, what his upbringing, the places he has gone, aside from going out to Utah, obviously, when he was building his career. But who wouldn't want to have that opportunity? Because this is rare that if you, for whatever reason, because it's losing on the field or it's misconduct off the field, misses out in continuing the glamour job, gets a shot at a second glamour job. That's pretty rare. It's happened a few times, but it's pretty rare. So he would be one of the few guys around, and probably only one of 2 or 3 that would get that shot to do it somewhere else. And so I would think that would be a great play for USC. And but But yeah, I don't know the man's goals and aspirations aside from building his legacy. But this has always been the job that he wanted because he's an Ohio State guy through and through. Earl Bruce, of course, being his mentor and him being from Mentor, Ohio, ironically. So this has been his dream job, and he finally reached the summit. And it's kind of convenient when your dream job is also arguably the best job in America or one of the top 2 or 3 or 4. But USC's in that class as well. So, hey, would I go out and coach USC if I was that talented and had that kind of credibility? I would. Hey, weather and program and money and prestige and to be able to win. Go. Can you imagine winning a national title at Florida twice? You do it at Ohio State and you're able to pull that off at USC, then he's got an angle on Saban that he could probably maybe make a counterpoint to the Saban's the greatest of all time. So, yeah, from a legacy standpoint, if he's really into that, that would be a play for him to make, sure.
Yeah, I also think if the university decides to move on from Urban, that hurts really bad in recruiting. I don't think Ryan Day would be as good as a recruiter as Urban is.
Well, few are. Few, if any, are. He has, although if you look at the Jim Tressel era at Ohio State, they didn't push it quite to this degree, but he was still bringing in top 10 classes. So the place recruits itself to a certain extent, but the Big Ten is a different territory than it was then in regards to Penn State recruiting nationally. By the time Jim Tressel was owning the Big Ten late in his stay at Ohio State, Joe Paterno was pretty much recruiting the region, and he had backed off and wasn't the national presence that he had been, that James Franklin is now reestablished. And obviously Mark D'Antonio and Michigan State, they weren't the player that they currently are. And Michigan was really down in the dumps. And Tressel just had his lay of the land, and it's a stronger Big Ten recruiting landscape now. And so you've got a good point that to replace Urban Meyer is maybe more difficult than it seems on the surface.
All right, and my last question is I was watching the Kentucky-Mississippi State game today.
Yeah.
And I think Benny Snell is one of the most underrated running backs in the country.
I agree. If he doesn't kicked out of that bowl game, they beat Northwestern, most likely last year. That was an unfortunate incident. And yeah, he's just, think about national perception. We're sitting here and the SEC is highlighted by that 3:30 CBS game every week. And then the 2 games that ESPN shows either at 7 o'clock on ESPN, ESPN2. Those are the games that people watch. And Kentucky almost never makes that game. That is Alabama, Auburn, LSU window, and Georgia. And we don't see a whole lot of Benny Snell. You know, I've got a Kentucky guy that comes on here on a regular basis, Kevin McGuffey, and we talk Kentucky football. And I've got to admit to him, I'm like, I'm trying to watch everybody. And when is Kentucky going to be in a position to which that's the game I'm watching? It's rare. It's very rare. It's basically never until they get to a bowl game. So, yeah, Benny Snell, I think it was telling a couple weeks ago. They went to Florida against a really good Florida defense, not a great vintage Florida defense, but a very good defense, a top 15 to 20 defense in the nation. And Terry Wilson could really not threaten that defense through the air. They just handed it to Benny Snell, and he still racked up like $150 on Florida when the target was on his chest, and they knew to load the box and stop Benny Snell, and he still churned out yardage against the Gators. I didn't see his numbers today, but go ahead.
You think the SEC East is between Georgia and Kentucky now?
I think it's between Georgia and Georgia. No, I would love to see the game, and we will see the game. And mathematically speaking, that's what it is right now. Everybody else has a loss, excluding maybe somebody. No, everybody else has a loss in the conference, don't they? So technically speaking, yes, but I guess if Kentucky can beat Mississippi State by 3 touchdowns at home, and then they can go to Florida and win by whatever it turned out to be. I think 11 points. Maybe they're better than we all thought they were. And I've got to think that game's probably in 4 or 5 weeks, something in that range. Do you know where the game is? I think they played at Georgia last year, so they might be playing in Lexington this year. So maybe you're not as far-fetched as we might think. I think they're at Kentucky this year.
Well, that's all I had for you, Mark. Thank you for allowing me to call in.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
All right. No problem.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, covering the game that we love, and we love it because of nights like tonight. I think we love it every day of the year, and like nights like tonight, we go out of our minds because you got all shapes and sizes of games, and that's what I love as well. You know, you can go with the style of the Big 12 or the SEC, the Big 10. Every conference has a different flavor, and what we got to see at the same time with Oregon Stanford was classic Oregon versus Stanford, the muscle versus the quickness and speed, although that's not quite as differentiated as it was 5 years ago. But we got a game right down to the wire that went into overtime. That was a classic meltdown. Unfortunately, the young man fumbles. C.J. Verdell, I believe Verdell was the guy that carried the ball in the last 45 seconds for Oregon that coughed it up at the 40 that allows Stanford to come down the field. Jet Toner converts from 32 yards, and we've got a dramatic finish there with the score by Stanford, and then Justin Herbert throws 4 incomplete passes in the end zone. So you got a top 10 NFL quarterback selection for next year's NFL draft going up against a defense that stops him and shuts him out of the end zone in one of the key conference games for the Pac-12. Simultaneously, we're watching Wisconsin march down the field in a game following a week in which they were embarrassed at home against BYU in what is the marquee game in the Big Ten Western Division, a defensive struggle that Wisconsin takes the ball down the field in the final minute, scores with 55 seconds left, comes up with an interception to seal the deal and win at Kinnick Stadium, one of the more difficult places to play in college football. So both road teams in difficult settings at night, Autzen Stadium, Kinnick Stadium, they pull off the comeback victories. So that's of note, and to credit David Shaw and Paul Christ and their teams in coming up with huge wins. And for Wisconsin, again, that's the one game in the division that seems to, at this point, something else could break loose, but it seems to be the division decider. It's going to be far-fetched for any of us to come up with a scenario in which anybody else plays themselves into a position to challenge Wisconsin and Iowa. Whereas the Pac-12 North is a little bit more jumbled because the team that we're watching right now, Washington, is, of course, the most talented team in the Pac-12 North Division and seems to be the best team. Right now, hanging on to a 1-touchdown lead at home against Arizona State, the Sun Devils, man, if they could add this win against Washington to a resume that includes Michigan State, we're going to have to stop laughing at Herm Edwards here pretty soon. Interesting stuff in college football. Interesting stuff. I usually make it a late night chore for myself, which the first few I go through, it's a labor of love, and then it turns out to be a grind. But I kind of force myself to try to read every recap in Power 5 football, at least the Power 5 games, which turns out to be about 25, 30, 35 games, whatever it is, something in that range. All the Power 5 recaps, stats, team summaries at the end of the night to make sure that I'm not missing anything, and also prepare us to deliver our newsletter, The Voice of College Football, on Monday. So please, if you love college football, and I'm not going to do anything stupid or unethical with your email address, because think about it, you're giving me your email address in exchange for my email address, MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. So send me your email address if you would like us to deliver our newsletter to you each and every Monday, The Voice of College Football. So send your email address to MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. Also, I know you guys watch YouTube and you watch all sorts of different content creators on YouTube and in other places And we're all trying to make a name for ourselves and trying to build a platform. Some of us just as a hobby. I'm trying to do it more as a business. Yes, it's a hobby in that I've got another job that pays the bills. I can't make $300 off of YouTube every month and have that pay the bills. But you guys see how much time I'm putting into this each and every week, which we're looking at 45, 50 hours just here on YouTube and with everything else I'm doing. So I am trying to build this to the point in which it is self-sufficient and can really get up and running and roll, and it can be a better product for you and a better product for me. And one of the reasons, one of the ways I'm doing that, I should say, is with this Amazon link that you see in all the description sections of every video. So if you go to any video of your choosing, go to the description section, click on any of those Amazon links and completely ignore the product that's there. But if you shop on Amazon, or most likely with 95% of my audience being male, that's what YouTube is telling me, 95% of my audience is male. You're 5% of the significant others. You need to go track them down. Let them enter Amazon, show them the link, give them the link to enter Amazon. Then you shop and buy whatever you want, and that helps out the cause here at Mark Rogers TV. Also, the helmet's back here. So the deal is that between now and October 1st, let me know what 2 helmets you want me to add. And just to make sure you're not missing anything, we already have the 4 college football playoff teams from 2 years ago: Alabama, Washington, Clemson, Ohio State. We also added Tennessee and Ole Miss. I've explained why in the past. But anyway, those are the 6 that we have. We're going to add 2. And I want you guys to be able to dictate to me, and you guys control which 2 I'm going to add. I may add more than 2, but you're definitely going to have the say over the first 2 that I purchase. So between now and October 1st, don't say anything about this in the comment section in the chat, in the live chat, because I'm going to miss that, because it flies by and it records, and it's a mess to try to find comments after the fact in the live chat. Go to any video, and leave your comment of what 2 helmets you want me to add. And I'm going to add the 2 helmets that get the most votes. So vote for 2 helmets that aren't already there, and I'm going to add those. All right. What else happened today of note? Auburn had the week off against a pitiful Arkansas team, 34-3. Tennessee, I thought that they might be able to get into a bit of a rock fight with Florida with 2 really bad offenses, but they just made too many mistakes in that game, and the Gators' defensive front was overwhelming from what I saw in a 47-21 win that in many ways wasn't that close. We almost saw a monumental upset with Army going to Oklahoma, and this is really the first time that the Sooners have been challenged to the wire. Iowa State gave them a good game last week, but just challenged to the wire in that game. So as we stand right now, as you guys know, I will provide previews and predictions throughout the week, getting us set up for next Saturday. I will release my top 25 that makes sense. It is the top 25 that makes sense. That will be released tomorrow, along with Why Not. I will work on my bottom 10. Some people seem to like my bottom 10. We kind of do that in jest, so it's not necessarily the 10 worst teams in the country. It's kind of the 10 most embarrassing teams or situations in the country. So we picked on the Big Ten last week, and maybe we'll pick on the ACC this week, and we certainly picked on Nebraska and UCLA and some other teams in our bottom 10. Florida State may inch its way out of the bottom 10, but it's going to be kind of difficult for them to do that, even with the win against Northern Illinois today. So we'll have our bottom 10. We'll have our top 25. I'm going to update our conference rankings, where we had The Pac-12 at number 5 last week. The Big 12 at 4. The ACC at 3. ACC, that's a tenuous position. You looked awful today. Number 2, the Big 10, and the SEC is in another world right now. I will argue that with anyone. The SEC has outperformed the other conferences, and it's not even close. For as disappointing as the Big Ten has been, once I looked at the results and the games and put them into context, it was not difficult. I thought it was going to be. It was not difficult for me to choose the Big Ten as the second best conference, not because the conference has played that well, but every other conference has not played well. It's just been the SEC that's just been, really the SEC has not slipped up. Maybe Tennessee getting blown out by West Virginia and Arkansas looking as bad as they have against a couple group of 5 teams. But really significantly, the SEC has not slipped up at all. I want to mention Volunteer Roadshow. Many of you out there know him much better than I do. I only know the name. And in watching Uncle Lou's program, I know that he was in a very, very bad truck accident a couple nights ago, and so I left him a message to let him know that we're praying for him, that we're thinking about him, that he is our prayers and support. And certainly I admire him, and I hear a lot of good things about him. I didn't know anything about him at all, except that he would comment to my show on a fairly regular basis here in the last couple months. And then he got on the phone line just about this time last week. It might have been last weekend that he called in and we had a phone conversation, and then he invited me on his show. And then unfortunately it was maybe the next day that he got in that accident. So we hope he's doing much better. And I look forward to seeing him back doing his thing. And also we'll invite him back here at Mark Rogers TV, but we want to give him our best wishes and thoughts and prayers. Bad beats might be, after what I experienced this weekend, you may have a Scott Van Pelt like bad beat video from me. It was one of those where it could have been razor close. And I just got to keep telling myself, you know what, for every bad beat that seems to go against all logic and where you think I had this game nailed and something crazy happened for me to miss this one, there's some lucky sucker on the other side that's getting a good beat, because it all should even out, right? It's like in baseball, the bloops and the line drives should all even out in the long run. So I'm hoping that maybe I got a extra lucky week coming up. Whew. Oregon and Iowa were the 2 last ones. And in the Iowa situation, I don't even consider that a bad beat. They gave up a last minute drive to lose the game, and I lost it by 1 point. I had Iowa +3. They lost by 4. But the Oregon game, come on, fumble with 45 seconds left, and then you lose in overtime. So there it is. All right. We've got 12 minutes left in the Washington-Arizona State game. Huskies lead by a touchdown. Myles Gaskin's on the field. We see that he's rushed for 73 and caught passes for 23. Washington's in scoring position to go up by 2 scores. Again, 12 minutes left to play. Jake Browning in the shotgun. It's 2nd and 6th in the 4th quarter. And Washington, of course, trying to stay in the running for a college football playoff appearance and owning the Pac-12 conference. They throw it inside the 5-yard line. We will have like a 3rd and 2, something in that range. So unless anybody wants to call and talk college football, I'm going to take in the last 10 minutes of this game. I may actually come back and summarize some of these games that I took in, most notably Oregon, Stanford, Wisconsin, Iowa. I watched Alabama, Texas A&M as well, and caught bits and pieces of a ton of games throughout the day in a fascinating, fascinating day for college football. Again, subscribe to the newsletter by leaving your email address at mine, MarkRogersTV @gmail.com. Help us out by going through the Amazon links to shop at Amazon. You don't have to buy the products. Just shop at Amazon using one of the links in the description section. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, we appreciate you guys and your support. It's always fun talking college football. And days like today make it even that much more fun. And, of course, talking to you is always a great thing for me. We will see you next time.